Welcome everyone to the January meeting of the Cowcatcher Division. We've got a pretty full agenda today, so we need to get started and move right along. We've got a number of people joining us on Zoom, and we welcome them. So first of all, I'd like to once again thank the Texas Western Model Railroad Club for letting us helping us with this, letting us use their facilities. And David, do you want to get up and say anything?
Sure, thank you. First of all, welcome to the Texas Western. We're glad you're here. Who's here for the first time? Welcome. It's good to have you here. This is our home layout, the Texas Western Model Railroad Club. And the second Saturday of every month, we host the Division I here to hold their meeting. So we're glad you're here. Before you get out of here today, take time to walk around the layout and see how we're coming along. We've made a lot of progress since the last time we held a meeting here. We finally got fascia up and some plex, and we're still working on different areas. So we're glad you're here. And if you have any questions before you leave here today, when you're walking around looking at the layout, ask somebody with a red hat on. I forgot to wear mine. That denotes that you're talking to a member, and they can tell you what we're trying to do. So welcome and thanks for being here.
Okay, good. Thank you, David.
You're welcome, sir.
Just a reminder, and I'm sure you saw it when we came in the door, but we're having a raffle. We're raffling off 4 tickets to the Durango and Silverton Railroad. And that raffle will occur at the end of the meeting. It's the 4 tickets are 2 adults, 2 children. It's a $400 value. The tickets are $5 a piece, 6 for $25. So please see Trapper for your raffle ticket. And I hope you're bringing your Christmas cash, and we do take checks for anyone that didn't have cash. Yes.
I recently did that in October, the Durango and Silverton. Beautiful ride up.
Yeah, it really is. Super ride. The tickets are good for the entire season of 2023. So please, if you didn't win the Mega Millions, you got a chance here to pick up a raffle ticket and a train ride for $5. Okay, a couple other things coming up. Plano Train Show, a reminder. Plano Train Show is next weekend, the 21st and 22nd at the Plano Event Center. Russell is coordinating our volunteers, and right now, Russell, you want to stand up and talk to the membership about volunteering?
Right now we've got our 2 things that will require Watson. You want to file the batch QC retaining, and then I'm just going to do things on weathering. Right now I've got 1 volunteer that's to help on Saturday with Dr. Ross. So we have Saturday and Sunday wide open. We're also going to be doing the Build-A-World kit as well like we did last time. So if you want to jump in and help on that, that would be awesome. So Saturday, Sunday, pretty much wide open. So if anybody wants to let me know if they want to show up, I'll put it on my notes.
So
we'll see you there.
We really need a couple more volunteers from D1 to help with this show. We're generally responsible for the spring show, but we always help out in the winter show, or it's the fall show. I mean, we always help out in the winter show. So please see Russell about volunteering. We can use the help. Okay. Another thing coming up in the area is the Houston Train Show is at the Pasadena Convention Center, and that is the end of the month. So keep that in mind. More information on that is on the website. David Grind has accepted the position of treasurer of the division, filling in for the spot I left vacant. And I, of course, filling in for Mackie as a director now. And Jim Davis has accepted the position of ops manager. So thank you guys for volunteering, and looking forward to working with you guys. Want to talk a little bit about the Christmas party. We had 66 people at our Christmas party in December at the Forest Hill Convention Center. That set an all-time record as far as attendees. And I think the interesting thing about that is that the weather, we had terrible rain the entire night. So it was very difficult for people to get here. So thank you for participating. I think everybody had a great time. And I also want to thank the people who contributed door prizes and that would be Grapevine Vintage Railroad, the Discount Model Trains, Model Train Crossing, and also Chris Mahan, who donated something as a door prize. The other thing is, Trapper, thank you again for your work on the Christmas party. And also I want to publicly thank Venus, Whalen, and the city of Forest Hills for all their support at our Christmas party. Okay, from a regional standpoint, I want to just let everybody know that on February 5th, the LSR Board of Directors is going to have a Zoom meeting, and I will be attending that, and a couple other people that are on the Board of Directors will be at that too from this area. The national announcement is, or national notice is Amherst Train Show is in Springfield, Mass. In 2 weeks. Is anybody attending that show? Thank you, David. Anybody else? We've got one person. It's a great show. It attracts most of the top modelers and the manufacturers around the country, and it's well worth attending. I would encourage anybody else to go. I think many people have been there several times, in years past, and they've always gotten a lot out of it. I also want to bring up the Texas Express. We got our convention, the NMRA National Convention coming up in Grapevine in August. Don't forget to register. Keep in mind, if you register early, you get priorities for clinics and things. And also, does anybody else need any more business cards to pass out to people to attend? These are informational type cards that Joe Lysing has. Has everybody got some of these? Your model train buddies or model train friends, give them a card, encourage them to attend the convention. Okay? Anybody need any more? Got a couple back there, Joe. Okay, moving on. At the Christmas party, we announced the winners of some of the awards that we have every year. And let me just talk a little bit about that. Beginning in 2017, Cowcatcher Division initiated some special awards to recognize those who have set themselves apart and have provided service, leadership, and dedication to the division and to the hobby. The awards specifically identify 3 categories: service, overall contribution, leadership, and fine craftsmanship. So for the Jim Norwood Award is the first award I want to hand out, and that honors a member who has shown exemplary service and leadership in the past year. And that is Mr. Steve Gratke. Steve is our new webmaster. Steve, come on up here. Congratulations. Steve's done a lot of work on our website and has done a terrific job with it. And there he is. Don't smile, guys.
I did last week.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, there you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You didn't realize what? You didn't realize what?
I'd have to scoot up here so you can look at me.
Okay. The next award is the John Garfield Volunteer of the Year Award, and that honors, of course, an outstanding volunteer. And just a comment about John Garfield. John, the reason this is named after John is that he usually volunteers for everything. He's been very helpful in getting this division up and running and never hesitates to take on a volunteer task. This year's volunteer award is Russell Gifford. Russell?
Thanks, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I think most of the people in this room knew Leo Paletti. Leo was a tremendous modeler. He just has a wonderful legacy of outstanding models. He was a member of the Texas Western Club, as well as this division, and was just a superior model builder. And the Leo Paletti Award for Craftsmanship this year goes to Cole Rash. Cole? Congratulations, Cole. Okay, and the last award is the Director's Award for Outstanding Leadership Team Member. And this recognizes a leader whose performance went beyond the expectations with results producing benefits for the division. And the winner, this year's winner, is David Hagar. David? Congratulations.
Well, that's
Hang on, guys, okay?
Don't smile.
Yeah, don't smile, use your feet. Yeah, very good, all right. Those will be good, David. Those are that.
Okay, and then the last award, this isn't really an award, but it's as you know, Mike Mackey, who just walked in the door, has been a division director for about 6 years and has done a wonderful job in building this division up and making it a very vibrant organization like it is now. And so he's also served as a real mentor to me and is making my life, or my transition to a director of Cowcatcher, very easy. So Mike, we've got a plaque for you, and it says, "In grateful appreciation to Mike Mackey, MMR, for displaying outstanding leadership and enthusiasm while serving as director of Cowcatcher Division from 2017 to 2022.
Sure.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it very much. This is very much appreciated from everybody, because this whole division has been it's been something that I've enjoyed building, but I couldn't have built it if there wasn't people that wanted to help build it with me. So this goes back to all of you. Thank you very much. I had a lot of help from a lot of folks, and you guys have made my life easy by putting together a great team who just steps in and just lets everything happen. And I hope you guys continue to work with Dick. I know that he's said that a lot of folks are already helping him in a lot of ways. So congratulations to Dick. Thank you all for this. This is very kind. I appreciate it. I'll treasure this. Thank you.
Okay, achievement program. Dwayne, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Talk about that a whole lot.
Yes, please do.
So I haven't had a chance to talk with Dick about this, and I'm just going to jump in and do it. One of the things that we're going to do over in Division 3 this year is kind of a takeoff on something that Scale Rails did about 10 or 12 years ago. And we'll take a little time each month to talk about a piece of the achievement program. And they called theirs the year of the MMR, which I thought was a little pretentious, but I do want to take some time to talk about each segment of it. And what I'd like to try to do is, because we've got myself and Mackie and Dr. Ross and Jeff here, one of us each month will try to talk about a certain section of the AP. And since we've just been handing out the awards, I thought it was really appropriate to talk about volunteer. Volunteer is the most awarded certificate of all of them, out of all 11. And it's the one that seems the most daunting. Everybody that gets started in the AP starts looking at that like, oh my God, I gotta have 62. Holy crap, I'm never gonna reach this. It's surprising how fast the hours add up. You get guys, John's a good example of this. Like he said, he's always volunteering to, I need this done, I'll do it. I need this done, I'll do it. These little things add up over time, and you keep track of them, keep your little log running, and next thing you know, you're there. If you're working on the new convention, or the national convention that's coming up later this year, you're drawing points really quickly. If you work with the LSR on their conventions, you can also earn some points a little quicker because it's a regional event and a national event. They get more points as you go up. But it's not near as daunting a task as you would think. Sir?
Tell them about Crumpton.
Oh, yeah. We sat down on the phone the other day, myself and Mike and David, and started kind of going through where are we with the volunteer. And he had sent me some other paperwork, and Mike brought up his volunteer. He goes, well, I think I'm a little bit short. And we started going through it and found out he was way over. I mean, way over. So I've got 2 pieces of paperwork for you now. I got to submit here in the next couple of 3 days. So it's one of those things where it's surprising how fast it adds up. Don't let that scare you. Mr. Gradke probably I'll be getting fairly close with it with all the work he's been doing on the website and everything. So I'll be looking forward to seeing some paperwork from you soon, I hope. Sir? Yeah, anytime you work the booth at the Plano show, because that is a NMRA sponsored event, that counts. So if you come in and you do the build a world, or you bring stuff in and you build trees and talk to people about doing that, if you just sit there and try to evangelize the NMRA and try to bring in the brethren there, bring in the lost, that counts. And you get points for that, and all of that stuff adds up over time. And it's amazing how fast, that number will be reached. So again, if you've got any questions about any of that, please feel free to let me know. If you're looking at stuff going, well, I've got all this stuff, and I had one guy tell me once, he goes, Dwayne, I'd love to get in the middle of it, but man, I'm 73. And my layout's basically done. I don't have time or a space to start over again. I said, why would you start over again? He goes, well, I just became a member. And I said, so? He goes, it doesn't, I can count all the stuff I built in the past. I said, you can count something you built when you were in kindergarten for all I care. If it's good enough to score, it scores. So if you've got a layout running at home that's at least 4x8 in HO, you may qualify for several things and not even know it. So if you've got some questions, any interest at all, please let me know. And on the closing note, nobody has submitted any paperwork other than Mr. Crumpton, and I should have it submitted. My deadline to get it to Nationals on the 20th. I'll have David's paperwork up there, and then they usually get them turned, and I get them back to present at the next month's meeting. Our national AP chair is having some unscheduled surgery, so it may get delayed. I don't know. There is supposedly someone who's going to be doing it, but nobody's given an official word as to where to send the paperwork to and all of that. So for right now, we'll see. But hopefully I'll have your certs here next month. So, but anyway, there's several people sitting in here that qualify for volunteer, I'm sure, if not having more things with all the work going on over here as well. If you're doing Lysing, Mr. Lysing back here is a good example of scenery. He's got a few square feet that he built on Mike's layout. He's got some stuff he's working on at home. If he were a member here and had done a few square feet of scenery up here, as long as he could walk over and get another member to say, yep, Joe built it from here to here, we could add it all up and it all counts toward the required number of square feet. It doesn't have to be all in one contiguous section on a layout. So bear that in mind. If you've got a club with modules and you've got a couple of 2-foot by 4-foot modules, well, there's part of your 32 square feet right there. So we're going to cover each bit of them each month for this next year, and we'll pick a subject for next month and surprise you all with it. But at any rate, fill out your paperwork. Let me know if you got any questions. Thanks.
The AP you've heard this before, but I'm going to say it again. The AP program will make you a better modeler.
It will, and you're going to hear me say that a lot. In fact, you've probably heard me say that a lot, but it really is. I mean, by the time you get done with it, you're going to find that you're building things that you never would have thought you were built before. You're going to be working with materials that you never would have worked with before, and won't think anything about it. The skill sets you're going to learn along the way and the quality of the craftsmanship that you can turn out will change over time. And you're going to find when you get down to the end of it, you're a lot better modeler than you were when you started off. So if you want to get better at your craft, let's talk after the meeting.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you, sir.
I want to go back to, I saw a couple hands come up when we were talking about newcomers or visitors to the meeting. Could you guys raise your hands again and stand up, please? And introduce yourself. Tell us, let's start with, is it Jared?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jared Roberts. I'm from Denton. And I'm here for 2 reasons. Number one, 4014 stopped by a couple of years ago and planted a seed in my brain And somebody was actually working the booth at the Plano show back in October, and that got me here, so.
Well,
nice
good,
to
welcome,
see / meet all of you.
welcome, Jared. And there was another visitor in the back
Nice
room.
to meet you.
Could you stand up and introduce yourself, please?
Miles News over in Carrollton.
Because Joe, Mike, and Tom encouraged me to come. So
And do you have a layout?
I do, yes. It's 10 by 22.
What scale?
HO.
Okay, and what area do you model or what?
Mostly Texas-specific mid-50s.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else new? Okay, very good. Okay, so let's move on to questions and answers. What's giving you problems in your modeling? Is there anything giving you problems, or any problem you're having on your layout that you need some advice on? Yes, Chris, in the back.
I've got some soft metal castings in the pit, and I'm wondering what kind of glue or adhesive I can use besides epoxy.
CA.
Yeah, CA will work as long as you don't have to put it under a load. So if it's holding something up, CA may not be the best solution. They sell a glue called E6000.
E6000.
And Gorilla has a version of it. It's basically a contact cement, and it dries clear, and it's really sturdy. Sure. JB Weld will fix anything.
JP Weld can epoxy, so yeah.
Yeah,
It's messy too.
it can be, yeah.
Something I've started to work with is a glue called Crafter's Pick, and it's called the Ultimate. That's what they call it. It is a very, very thick PVA, and it is touted to work with metal also. I have not finished testing with it yet, but the early indications. Now, the problem with it is a very slow drying glue.
Yeah.
I will tell you that up front. It's slow. So make sure that you brace it well, because it takes a full 24 hours to cure.
Crafter's Pick's a favorite from a lot of the modelers up in the Kansas City area. Kind of turned into that. You can pick it up over at Hobby Lobby. If you go to the aisle where they have all the craft paints, if you're standing there looking at the big rainbow of colors, just do a 180 and it's on the wall behind you with all the other glues. As Jeff said, it takes a long time to dry. It looks a lot like Aleene's tacky glue. It does tack up similar to the tacky glue, but it takes forever for that stuff to dry. Which I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I've got enough modeling projects on my plate that if it takes 24 hours to dry, that's the wrong glue for me. So I bought a bottle of it, tried it, and I think I threw it away. Because if it takes more than 20 minutes to dry, I'm done. I'm out.
So that E6000 is available at Hobby Lobby too?
Yes, it is.
Or, you know, it's available at Walmart.
Yeah, you can get it at Walmart.
Any place you
Or
want.
Walmart,
Yep.
or Lowe's.
The Gorilla Glue variant, I bought mine at Home Depot, but it's available probably anywhere you find Gorilla Glue. I think Hobby Lobby's even got it too.
Yep.
Comes in a silver tube, but it's a contact cement. So you're gonna put a little bit on both surfaces and then bond them together. You've only got a couple of 3 seconds once you bond them together before it's pretty much permanent. So you want to have some sort of jig set up to pop it into to make sure you're square, or you're not getting it back apart. This stuff is so good. If any of you have ever tried building those nasty old Magnuson resin oily parts, you can never find anything but epoxy practically that'll hold that stuff together. I'm here to tell you, this stuff will hold the old Magnuson kits together, and it doesn't show any signs of having any problems. I did find, I'm actually repairing a building for Mike. It's an old Magnuson kit. And I did find when you put a joint together and you only put the glue on one surface, it will make a flexible joint. You probably flex it enough that you might be able to get it to come back apart, but it will hold on those old Magnuson kits, but you can move the wall. So if you've got one that might be a little out of square, only put the glue on one piece and then pop it together and let that set up, and then you can pull it back to square if you need to. But if you're pretty, if you got your joints sanded, everything's nice and tight, it should stay square on its own. Put the glue on both surfaces, pop it together. It is rock solid and will not move.
And that's Gorilla?
That's the Gorilla Glue.
Gorilla
version of it.
Glue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does E6000 work the same way?
Yes, in fact, even on Gorilla's Glue tube, it says that this is their version of E6000. Yeah, so it's the exact same kind of stuff.
So I had a situation, I was doing some modeling of trying to put some buildings together and the other day, and I opened up my CA jar, and it was all kind of difficult to open and kind of messy. And I'm wondering, what's a good way of storing CA glue to keep it clean and keep it
Yeah, put it in the refrigerator.
refrigerator?
Yep.
Yep, right.
Here's another biggie. How many of you use a kicker with your CA? All right. You put your CA in the fridge, you put the kicker in the garage.
Yes.
The only time those two need to be getting anywhere near each other is when you're going to put it on something and pop two things together and then take the kicker out of the room. There's something about the way that kicker fumes off that will find its way into that CA bottle and harden the whole thing. It is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. But I ran into a problem when I first started using the kicker because I had them both sitting there side by side on the bench. And every time I turned around, my CA was hardening up. And I mentioned that to Chuck Linville one day, and he goes, "You got to sit next to your kicker, don't you?" And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Idiot." So, but if you're going to be storing your CA for any length of time between projects, go put it in the door in your refrigerator and just explain to the wife why you're doing it. And hopefully she won't throw it away and yell at you for doing it.
Okay, any other questions? In the back of the room?
Is there a comprehensive resource that would do comparisons of TCC decoders with respect to amperage draw, amperage rate?
The only place I've seen that is some soundtracks,
Yeah.
and they will compare theirs. Each of the manufacturers will try to compare theirs to one of their competitors and tell you why theirs is better. CCS, almost all of them have a chart that will compare against its comparable competitor. Yeah. But I haven't seen I have not seen a real, which I'd call a true, which is everything on, like a spreadsheet kind of thing. I have not seen one of those. Might be interesting to work up on though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but good idea. Thanks.
I think there's a DCC IO groups.
Yeah, you might be able to find something from them.
If you log on to the DCC IO groups, you might be able to
Somebody
pose
may.
that question, and
Yep.
somebody may have done the research and be able to give you that.
The really tricky thing with going with something like what Jeff was talking about is it's being put out by one of the manufacturers. So we're going to talk about all the stuff that we do really good, and we're not going to mention the stuff that we don't do so good. And I'm going to talk about how I'm so much better than this guy, and I'm going to forget about the things where he really kicks our tail at it. So it's one of those, you take it with a grain of salt, but that IO group would be a good one. Does Andy have anything out on wiring for DCC, talking about decoders?
Well, and
It's
the
been
other
so long
thing
since
that
I've been on his site, I don't know.
The NMRA has a DCC working group,
Mhm.
and if you're interested in information from that working group, I can give you the contact information for the leader of the DCC working group, and he may have a comprehensive list of that.
Yeah.
That's totally unbiased.
Yeah, and the world in DCC with the announcement of the Blue NAMI is changing, because with the Blue NAMI, you no longer have to have a system. You need to have one of these, and we all have one in our pockets. So I do have a friend of ours, Mark Lachey over in Dallas, who just got his MMR last month. He's got Blue NAMI now in at least one locomotive, and he's starting to try to run it through its paces. So hopefully I'll be able to give you guys some feedback on how well that's working or not. We'll see. So far, everything seems to be pretty good. The reviews I've heard of it are pretty positive. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. We'll just see how long it goes.
Where's he putting the battery in?
Up in the tender. Of course, he's got SN3, so he's got plenty of room.
Yeah, I operated on an HO scale layout that had it weeks ago, where you put all the stuff on a gondola behind it,
Yeah,
so he can easily change out the battery and stuff.
sure.
Looks like Frank put it in there, you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that we start talking about power on board, and that's another thing with the achievement program where we've got to sit and start coming up with some standards to account for it, you know? But everybody keeps talking about this like, oh yeah, this only came along in the last couple of years. I'm like, no. There was a guy over with the ON30 Outlaws that worked over at Hobbytown, USA when it was back over off of Walnut. he's been doing power on board dead rail going back into the late 90s, early 2000s. He would tear apart remote control cars and rig everything up in an ON30 tender, and you would lift the tender hatch like you would to put water in the real one, and that was where his battery charging plug was. So you just pull it up there.
Oh, really?
But yeah, I about fell over the first time I walked in there, and he goes, "Hey, Dwayne, I got something for you." What? And he goes, "Watch this." He sets a locomotive up on a glass countertop, reaches over and grabs it right across the glass, and I went, "Okay, that's not right. Something is seriously wrong here." And so he starts showing me how he was doing it. It's like, so I buy one of these, clunk, and he sets this remote control car up there, and he says, "I tear it apart, and here's what happens." It's neat. I mean,
He was doing a radio.
yeah, it really is going to be the direction the hobby's going to go in, and it can't get here fast enough because I hate wiring.
Okay, any other questions? David Brown?
Finally.
No, go ahead.
No, David, go ahead.
Okay, here's my question. I'm on a normal scale?
At the end, that would be N, that would be too small.
Atlas,
You forgot the
use
knob
Atlas
knob.
code 55 track. The turnouts have a little tab on the side of the turnout where your wires, you can hot wire the front. Okay? Occasionally, for some reason, and it's always after I test it, and after I get it on the layout, and after it's glued down, it fails for some reason. The frog refuses to accept a solder jet because it's made out of some alloy. Everything I look up online says you can use this stuff, comes in a tube. It's used to solder aluminum, and it doesn't work. The other solution was a brass screw, and running that down through, put a brass screw on an N-scale turnout, it looks like a real manhole pump.
I was going to say about half of a Volkswagen, but yeah.
And I trying to find a small brass screw that would go through an inch of roadbed or more, if it's got torque, it was difficult to find.
Yeah.
Thinking of brass rod, but how do I keep it attached to the frog? You can't solder. So I'm gonna sit down, you all gonna tell me how to fix it.
Yeah. So here's how you do
I
that.
think
You,
it
you,
still has the same problem.
you lift the turnout up, and then you take a scale size big enough to actually work on, slide it underneath it, and throw that one away. Honestly, I don't know.
I've actually done that.
What about a wiper? Have you thought about that? Maybe put a piece of phosphor bronze on the bottom of the frog and put a piece of it on.
Sealed in- Plus, like I said, normally I've already installed the.
Yeah, so
you
it's
know, and
it's
I
coming.
don't want to rip it out.
Yeah, no,
I
no
have
doubt.
done that. Taken it, if it's in a critical location, I've taken it out, and put it in new. But
You may have to put drops on
Hey,
it.
David, is this nickel
Overloaded
silver?
epoxy.
Ooh,
say
that-
again,
Is
Maybe
your
the
track
silver
nickel?
loaded epoxy glue that we use for putting resistors on wheel sets.
yeah, I don't know what that.
I'll send you a link.
Yeah, it's an epoxy. I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. It's got silver in it, and it's conductive.
That would do it.
Oh, what about or
Yeah.
What?
conductive paint?
I've had mixed results with conductive paint,
Conductive
but
paint isn't very strong.
yeah, it won't pull a big
As long
load.
as you can maintain it in contact.
Well, I mean, so would a brass rod would do the same thing if you, like, a weapon.
Yeah.
I mean,
Is your rail nickel silver?
the rails nickel silver, that's no problem. But the frog is cast, and it's cast in some kind of alloy that you cannot solder to. It's electrically, that's electricity, but you can't solder. I mean, there's forums online that talk about it all the time, everybody bitches about it. It's, nothing's come up other than the brass screw thing.
And that may be one of those deals where you have to put drops out on the rail and some sort of keep alive in your locomotive just to get it through the frog. That's the beautiful thing about a keep alive. It covers up a lot of sins.
Keep alives are generally a little, you can do it in N scale, but
Yeah,
you
they're
gotta
hard.
rip out some of the frame and they're already light.
Yeah.
Okay, why was that epoxy? What?
It's a silver,
It's a silver loaded or silver conductive epoxy. MG Chemicals makes it, looks like it's on Amazon. You buy a little tube.
All right.
It works with resistors. I'm not sure if it holds the wire, but we use that to hold the wire. And then then covered it. The regular obviously, you probably maintain conduction and have it strong enough to stay. It would be a two-step process. I'm not sure the other stuff really is strong enough. I've had some resistors go off of axles.
Just replace the turnout.
Well, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, on the main,
I think it's expensive though.
Keep the lights covered.
Well, and
keep alive in 100 locomotives, isn't it?
when you start talking about Band-Aid solutions and turnouts, we're always doing that. 'Cause everybody always talks about having a DCC-friendly turnout, and I'm here to tell you that there's no such thing exists. It's not the turnout's problem that it's hitting the inside wheel of your locomotive most of the time. If it is, your turnout's out of gauge, and it should be corrected, not cut up and insulated in 14 different places. And if it's not the turnout out of gauge, it means your wheels are out of gauge, and that should be corrected and fix the problem, not the symptom. So,
Hey, Dave,
Dwayne off his soapbox.
David?
Yep.
Do you have a spare switch laying around that I can look at?
They're all broken. I mean, I just broken.
No.
Yeah, bring one to Plano.
Bring one to Plano.
I'm not gonna be here. I'm gonna be in Aruba.
You don't want much of a solution there.
Yeah,
You can mail 'em one.
I'd help
Mail
you,
'em.
but I'm going to Aruba.
7:00 tomorrow morning. I'm gone for 4 weeks to Aruba.
Mike, you had a,
Unless you're on Southwest, and then maybe not.
Hey, Dave, next meeting, bring it and let me
If
play
I
with it.
get one to Jim, I'll have to make it.
Okay.
okay. Mike, you had the question?
No, I had a tip. Are we at tips and tricks?
No, we're not at tips and tricks yet. Well, but we'll be there soon. We'll be there soon. But go ahead and give your trick.
So we're talking about turnouts, and how many of you guys have ever used Shinohara three-way turnouts? And how many of you had problems with those Shinohara?
Same guys.
Thanks to Mr. Pearson, I didn't even see him sitting here. He showed me a tip and a trick on that with taking some styrene, sheet styrene, and putting on the inside of the guardrail, because those guardrails on those Shinohara three-ways are out of gauge, just like Dwayne was talking about. Oh, well, no, mine were, yeah, they were Pecos too, yeah. So they're out of gauge, and they don't keep the guardrail. You say tomato, I say Peco, you know. So, but the guardrails don't keep that wheel against the rail tight enough, and it causes derails in those three-ways. So I took a small sheet of styrene and with a CA, put it in there, and then what you do is come back with a Dremel with your wire brush on it, and you can hit that across the top of the rail, and it will smooth it right down to even with the top of the rail.
Use the black nylon bristle.
Yeah, the black nylon bristle brush, okay? That way it doesn't scar your rail and the existing rail that you're working with. But when you do that, it will tighten up that guardrail. Your problems with those three-ways go right away. So
That same trick you use to insulate joints when you're coming up with a turnout and there's facing power coming at it. We've all glued in the piece of styrene and then spent half an hour carving it back out of the way. If you take that circular nylon bristle brush, chuck it up in your Dremel, spin that thing up as fast as it will go, walk in there and lay it up against the web on the outside and just go up over the end into the inside. And in 2 seconds, you have a perfectly rail-shaped piece of styrene in there insulating that track joint. I haven't picked up a knife to carve one of those things out in probably 15 or 20 years now since I ran across that little gem. And it really works well, but it will eat that styrene really quickly.
Okay, good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's move on. Well, now we'll move on to tips and tricks, the official tips and tricks. Dr. Ross. Yes.
It's interesting. In 2022, we had a high of 61 people at one meeting, a low of 36, but the average was 46
And, you know, this COVID's a factor, but the average the prior year was 41 and a half. That person. And today, we're off.
Today what? How many we got?
Today, we're off to a good start because we've gotten more than the average of last year. We're at 51, and that doesn't include, David Crandon back there, locked away in his little cupboard behind,
Yes, he's
so no
back
one can
here.
look at it, is writing down all those names. Well, now he's making me do it. So add all those, and we'll be,
Well, look at all the Zoom people we have.
You got another 10 up
You
here.
got another dozen.
I'll come up there and I'll copy it, so you can
We
take
even
it.
have Gordy with us, NRA president.
Fantastic. Hey.
Welcome, Gordy.
You're good to start.
Take a picture of
Gordy's waving. By the way, there's an NMRAX going right now also, in case anybody didn't know that.
Whose bright idea was that?
Speed going on vacation.
Speed, talk to Speed.
Conflict.
We've been doing this longer. We've got this time slot locked down.
Mike, there's 18 people on Zoom.
He's up front.
And we got, do you want to do another tip and trick?
Sure. So I'm gonna segue this slightly into show and tell. Did I say slightly? So I'm sitting there one day, I work from home, less I'm in IT that I am, and they don't care if I'm in the office or at the house. So I'm sitting there, my desk for the office happens to be the same desk I build models on. So I'm, it's nice, you know, you face this way you're at work, you face this way you're at home.
The commute stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, it's a nightmare. And if, you know, somebody gets jackknifed in the middle of the living room or something, it's awful. So I get this phone call from Mike one day. He goes, "Have you been on Blair Line's website anytime recently?" Oh, why? He goes, "Go pull that up." So I pull up my phone, he goes, "Check out this little team track loading dock that they're selling." Something like this. And we're looking at it, and it's a nice little model. And we're chit-chatting about, because it's two different pieces, so you could have it be in line, you could have it be, you know, square, you could put it in an L, you can make a hat, you can make a roach, you know, whatever. And fold up the paper, whatever works. And we were looking at it, and Mike says, "How hard do you think that would be to draw something like that up?" I went, "It's not real hard at all." So I sat down and drew it up and cut this thing out.
He blames us all on me. I just want you to
Of course.
understand that.
Because it's like Lay's potato chips. You can't have just one. So I drew up the prototype, and I cut it out, and looking at it, going, okay, the deck's too wide, and this isn't the right height, and this isn't right, and the deck, it needs nail holes in it, and it needs this, and okay, that's a timber frame because this isn't overlapping, so there should be peg holes in this, and built a prototype or two, sent some pictures off to some friends. They went, "It'd be neat if you could center punch those X's, if you can put an NVW on that, maybe put truss rods across it or something like that." I went, "Ooh, that's a neat idea." So this is like iteration number 5 over a week or so. But it's been fun to kind of play around with, and it is really, really versatile. Because again, you can have it all be linear, you can pop this down between a couple of tracks. Being in narrow gauge, if you've got any connection to the outside world, it's probably standard gauge, which, you know, the broad gauge has got its place, I guess. But this makes a nice transfer track, dock between narrow gauge to standard gauge kind of deals. And it was a really, once I got everything designed and cut out, it's a really quick build. And it goes together pretty easily. And then the tip part of this is, in the course of playing around with it, I wanted to darken the thing up and weather it up some, give it some age. And I got it a little darker than I really wanted, and it covered up a lot of my nail detail because these are scale 16-penny nail heads. Don't get out. In short, tiny. But I went and looked it up online because I didn't have any 16 pennies laying around the shop, and then drew them in there accordingly, and they're all randomized in there too, so it doesn't look like somebody got in there with a bounce wheel and perfectly aligned them, because nobody ever drives a nail like that. So at any rate, I'm putting some stain on. I got it a little dark, so I sanded it back. That gave it a neat effect. And then I started doing something to get some streaks going up the ramp, and effectively found out that if you're real careful with it, you can dry brush with stain. And then you can come back in and feather it out a little bit, and you get some really nice little streaking effects. So I'm going to set this up here if you want to come up and take a look, and it's got some of that in it. And then,
Did you laser cut that?
yes, yeah. I mean, if I were going to put that, even with the MBWs in it and everything else, it probably wouldn't look too bad up on the front of the layout. But if I was really putting it up in the foreground, I'd build it board by board. Just
Because it's you.
yeah, I'm funny that way. Fussell, Mr. Fussell, when did we start building that grain elevator? About a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
So Jerry approached me after a meeting one day and asked me what I'd charge him to build a model for him. And I said, well, for you, nothing. But he wanted me to build this one for the club that's going to go around the corner over here. And it's been down there in the bottom of the case now since I got it finished. But the neat part about this particular kit, it's made by Laser Kit. I think they're still out of St. Louis, I think. But they make this country grain elevator, I think is what it's called. And it's a nice kit. It makes up into something that looks enough like a grain elevator, but it's slightly different. So it doesn't have that stereotypical look to it, but it builds up really nicely. I mean, the engineering on it's really well done. But the really cool part about this is, and if you've never seen a laser work or never worked with a laser kit, you're going to take a sheet of material and you're going to put the whole sheet in the laser, and then you're going to cut your parts out. And most manufacturers are going to take that whole sheet and then put it in the box. They're not going to pop the parts out of the sheet and put those in the box, because then they're going to slide around and possibly get damaged. So the reason I tell you all this is there was so much extra clapboard out and around where the walls had been cut out of this that I was able to make this little yard office to go with the little building. I've been meaning to bring this up to Jerry now for, let's see, we said a year and a half. So yeah, about a year and a half. This was also a beneficiary of Mike's phone call, because this was the first prototype of the loading docks. And I was sitting there Wednesday on a conference call, and I happened to glance over where that prototype was just sitting there on the workbench. I looked at it and said, you know, it's a shame that's going to go to waste. You know, I need a dock to put that little building on. Ooh, okay. So as soon as I was done with work, I rotated the chair over 90 degrees and proceeded to cut the dock in half and cut the ramp off the one end and put the two of them together, and then put some extra bracing underneath it, and then put some stairs on it, and then finished hanging the trim on it. It's down to where it just needs some signs put on it, and it'll be ready to go. I'm doing a clinic next weekend at the Plano show on doing signs. I will give you a very small preview of that right now. Evans Design Software. They are out on the internet. They have something they call Model Builder that they've had for years and years. It's a really cool little tool where you can lay out walls of a building, you can put doors on it, you can put windows on it, and print the thing off like the old papercrete models. And these things look really, really good from about middle of the layout back, and to the point where you can't really tell it's not corrugated sheet metal unless you walk up there and put your finger on it in some cases. I got turned on to that by Pat Harriman, who was the National AP chairman before Dad was years and years ago. And I've been using it for ages for mock-ups and things like that. Well, Evans Design, come to find out, has one they call the Advertiser that allows you to manipulate signs and put lettering on them and add things to them. And it's really slick. I mean, for example, he's got the old Dr. Pepper where it's just a red background, white Dr. Pepper, and the end of the Dr. Pepper has a big white swoop that goes back underneath it. And that's all that was on it. Well, whenever you saw that, it always said in black letters, good for life. So I pulled it up, edited it, stuck that on there, then went underneath it and put, you know, bottled in Blanchard Springs Bottling Company, Blanchard Springs, Colorado, which will be the main town on my railroad. And then put up at the top that you could get ice cold Coca-Cola at Gower's Drugstore from It's a Wonderful Life. But I'm going to demo that software during the clinic, and we're actually going to put some signs on this so that Jerry can add it to the feed mill later on. Also, the reason I bring this up also in tips and tricks is if you come up and look at it, I've beat up the leading end of the freight dock. I'd be willing to bet you if we went to everyone's home that has a layout going and we looked at all your loading docks, they probably got all nice and square edges. And if you've ever watched anybody work in a warehouse environment, they don't very daintily pick it up and carry it over and set it over and then very carefully forklift the thing in there. Now it's drag it off the car, drag it out of the car, and the ends of these things get beat up quickly. So this one's probably got a couple of them that are a little deeper than I might normally have liked them, but that wood is really soft. So But this will give you an idea of how I like to beat these things up a bit. So he'll be sitting up here to check out.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Evans Design. They're out of Colorado, but they're online. I think it's evansdesign.com or evansdesignsoftware.com. Perfect, perfect. They've got Model Builder. They've got a piece that goes with it called the Brickyard, which gives you some extra rock textures, which is great for doing either rock walled buildings or foundations. It's a really nice ad for doing foundations. But you can do wood sided buildings, you can do brick buildings, you can do rock sided buildings. It's a really neat little piece of software, and it's not that expensive. I think you can get Model Builder for about $30-$35. If you do a download only, you can get it a little bit cheaper. But when I bought the advertiser from them here about 2-3 weeks ago, I got them to send me a DVD of it just in case, the download had any issues. And it was like $34, tax, title, license, and mailed to me. So the learning curve isn't that bad. If you've ever messed with any other kind of graphic software at all, you'll pick it up pretty quick. There's a very short amount of instructions that's inside the case with the DVD that will walk you through everything you need to know. But you can fade the signs to make them look older. You can put the lettering on angles and flip it around, and any font you've got on your computer you can use in the sign software. And I haven't played with it yet, but I think once you build a sign and you save it, you can import that sign into the Model Builder and have it be printed right there on the side of your building if you want to. So
Are the signs accurate?
I think so. With the quality of the print that comes out, they would almost have to be.
So you could design detail.
That I don't know. The other neat thing about this, and you asked that question, reminded me. When you first fire up any of their software, the first thing it's going to ask you is what scale do you work in? And you select that scale for that particular modeling project, and then everything you do would be in scale or HO or S or whatever. If nothing else, it's great for doing mock-ups for your buildings. It's good for laying a building out if you're going to build something from scratch and get an idea of, oh yeah, turn the corner and my windows don't line up or something like that. And again, if they're going to be in the background, you can actually print multiples of them and then cut the windows out and then glue them over the window from the original print and give it a little bit of 3D relief. We used it on the club layout we used to bring to the Plano show. There were 2 buildings on that on the right-hand end of town that I built where I used their roofing shingles, printed them off, and then cut the rows out and then put them on one row at a time. And so it still got the 3D relief, but you got the artwork of the shingle itself. So
Thank you,
well.
Dwayne. So who's got this little crane up here?
Block crane.
Yes, dock crane?
Gotcha. There's that tractor called a little hook. One of the tougher ones I've had to build, but the side beams are castings, but all the cross bracing is all balsa, so you have to cut all your cross braces out. I added some weld plates on it to give it a little bit more realism. Weathered it out. A lot of these are castings, but the control shed you got to build, they give you like 4 or 5 options. I did that, and it's got an operator inside of it, control levers and all that. These are used real commonly in a lot of docks on the shores just for offloading. They were electric powered, not diesel. It was unusual, I thought, as well. So I've got a couple of these. I've got another one of these to build. I'm going to do kind of make a pair of twins out of them. I'm going to use them somewhere on my way out because I thought they were used.
Very nice.
Different.
Very cool.
Was it a kit or did you scratch it?
It's a kit. It's called Little Hook. No.
I think it's J&L Innovation.
Put it on the end of Dwayne's loading dock right there.
There you go.
And then, there you go, and now it becomes part of the transfer station.
Right.
There
Oh,
you
that's
go.
kind of what it's for. I've got the layout we're doing. We don't really have any shoreline because we're doing South Dakota, but there's a lot of lumber yards and things of that nature there, so I'll put it on there somewhere. But it's a really pretty detailed kit. I've added a lot of electrical wiring to it for the winch motor, and there's a lot of pieces you got to make. It's just not like a casting and let's paint it. You have to assemble everything, and There's a lot of areas like the support rods come in, you have to take a drill through to get the rods in. And then when you're setting your dome, you gotta get your rods measured right. Then you take a file and you're filing the bottom to get it flat, to get it where it fits. And then you go half about 4 or 5 cups of coffee and you come back to it again. But it's fun. It's something unique, it's something different. And I picked them up, little things as a kit that somebody bought and was going to use the owl on a hobby shop. And I think I paid $10 a piece for them or something like that. So fun build. It's challenging, and the reason I like trying to do things that are hard that I've never done before, which is 90% of the stuff I'm doing right now. But trying to get the detail right, and so if I don't challenge myself, I don't get any better.
Okay. Thank you, Russell. Okay, we have one more show and tell, or tip and show and tell. And
Yeah, originally that little book was made by Alexander.
So it is, Alexander.
Okay, this is going to be very interactive, but how many of y'all have built buildings
if you want to use this spot over here,
Yeah, wherever.
I'll just slide over.
Okay, have built buildings out of styrene, or you tried to cut big pieces of styrene, and you use what, if you look online and you watch some of the videos from modelrailroader.com, what they want you to use is your X-Acto knife and a ruler, you know, like a metal ruler or something. How many of y'all have tried to cut styrene that way? You know, and inevitably you get halfway down and you're done this, right? Okay. I have a small company that builds building kits that are like the old DPM kits. And part of that is that once I have a kit, I actually include a piece of styrene for the roofing material. So I have literally cut thousands of pieces of styrene. Not this way at all. So, and because it's so large, you can't really use one of these. You can't use the chopper because you're talking about a piece of sheet styrene that, you know, is fairly large. So this is a 0.2 styrene. This is a 0.4. And the method that I'm going to show you, I stumbled on by accident because my wife used to sell creative memory scrapbook stuff, right? So have any of y'all ever been into the Hobby Lobby and seen one of these?
Sure.
This is a paper cutter. That's all it is. It's got a little bitty blade on the inside of this that it's got measurements on it. You can actually take it out to where it'll go all the way to 15 inches. They build large ones that have rotary cutters on them, but that's not really what you want. And the nice thing about this is let's just take a piece of the 0.4, and if I come down here and I want an exact 3-inch, I just close it. I can lock it down.
Hold on a second. Let me get it where everybody can see it on Zoom.
And it's a perfect cut all the way across. Okay, let's go up a little bit. 0.4 styrene, right? Do the same thing.
Hang on a second. Can you take your plastic bag out of the way?
Yeah.
You can see it on the big screen.
Okay. For this one's a 0.4. I really don't usually lock it down. Do the same thing. Well, in this case, I've scored it. Perfect cut. Well, and so then, you know, the question goes, well, just how far up in the thickness of styrene can you go? So let's just take a piece of, this is 0.8 thickness, okay? And so 0.08, and which I don't really use. I use the 0.04 and the 0.20 for my models. Just go across it. It's a very straight cut. So that led me over to discount model trains. This is literally the 1/4 inch styrene. I mean, this is like Plastruct. This is the thickest stuff they make. And I couldn't really get it to where it would score with this all the way through. But because you've got the measurement markers on the bottom here, you can go one side, you can flip it over.
There you go.
You know, and it makes just a perfect straight cut. And so these are about $25 at Hobby Lobby, 24 or something like that. And Michael's, yeah.
So does a rotary cutter work?
My wife has the giant rotary cutter, but it actually goes way deep. So I have not tried to use it. I mean, she
I
cuts,
got a rotary cutter.
yeah. No, but this little thing, you know, just because what I do is on these kits, I just measure out the size of the two sides and then I round it up to the nearest inch and then cut it out. And boom, I've got a kit ready to go without having to, you know, go the old route of using this guy, which is incredibly painful. The other thing I have tried is I've tried, this is the sidewalk styrene. There's another one in here that I tried, the clabbered styrene. Have any of y'all ever used that from Evergreen? And what I did was I scored it along the back, the smooth side and not the front side. And it's pretty much the exact same way. I can get this out of there. Now that was plain. That's 0.8 plain. Let me go down a little deeper. Yeah, here's the clabber. And what I did with it, like you said, I went on the smooth side of it, and so this side has the roughness to it, and then just put it in, go to whatever length I need. I have not tried to do any kind of angle cuts because really I don't really need angle cuts, but I don't know why there would be any problem doing angle cuts if you use some of like the die things that are in the chopper. But just across the back side. And so this is, if you're going to build anything out of styrene, this is like a godsend. And I have not tried to do, you know, real small strips where you'd like literally have to have a pair of pliers to cut it off or something, because you'd have to protect the styrene when you did that. But this is something to really look into if you're going to do buildings of any kind out of styrene. It just makes it quick and fast.
Eric, thank you very much.
Okay. One of those that I bought at Michael's came with two blades, smaller, deeper than the others. So thickness of the styrene that you want to cut, you might not need to score. You may be able to go straight through.
Yeah, and you notice on some of them I was able to go straight through.
Yeah, on the planner.
But it saved me so much time. Yeah.
Okay, before, we're going to take a break in a minute and then move into our program, which is David Hagar is going to talk about the ports of Galveston. But I want to talk, Cole, you want to talk about upcoming meetings, please? Give everybody a preview of the program in the next February and March.
So in March, we're trying to do a clinic for us. If you're interested in doing that, see me after the meeting, and I will send you a link that you can purchase this kit. It was I just looked it up. It was $35.99 on Amazon right now at 20% off.
So everybody knows what an Arduino is, right?
No.
Okay, explain that, Cole.
I'm not sure I'm the best to explain. So it's a little basic computer board. And you can use that computer board to control your signals, turnouts, your train elevator, I mean, all kinds of stuff, different animations on the layout.
Speed will tell you show you how to program it, and you can create welding arcs and lights and different things, different effects, throw, turnouts, stuff like that. It's a very interesting clinic. Mike?
The Speed put this clinic on, or a similar clinic at National, in last year. The Arduino that we worked on was a sound Arduino. And they are multifunctional. It can do one Arduino can do a lot of different things. So the one we did and set up was for background sounds. I did one for Lori Paletti's harbor area for her. And it's got, seals barking and seagulls and waves splashing and things like that in the background on a loop, and it's all triggered with a motion sensor when you walk in the area, and runs for a time that you set up on the Arduino, and it was pretty sophisticated. You can use them to help use and function cross buttons and do animations in that regard, just like Cole was talking about. I've also got Arduinos that are running servos for turnouts on my layout, so that the dispatcher at the dispatcher's board can control turnouts on the main line as a dispatcher would in real life. And so those Arduinos control the servos accordingly. So it's a multifunctional clinic. It's a really, really good clinic. It is something that I think if you ever went down that path, you'd enjoy doing. It's not that difficult to understand, especially with Speed's tutelage. He does a really good job.
So once, we get about 5 more people to be able to do the clinic at least. Once you get the kit ordered, and when it comes in, we're going to get the Speed in order to download the software and get everything set up, and then we will be bringing in a laptop with power supply, and we will that meeting will be going through the whole clinic with a hands-on clinic.
Okay, what's the date on that?
Cole, we got a question here.
What's the date on that?
It's a meeting in March, so the second Saturday. That's what we're trying for. We've got to get enough people to sign up by then.
So we need 5 more people to sign up, and the total cost is $35, $40.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Right now, it's $35.99 on Amazon.
Okay. And they just order Arduino, mini Arduino, just Arduino or mini Arduino? What is it?
It's a Arduino Uno, and then it comes with
Okay.
like servos, lights, breadboard. There's, I think it's a 45, 50 piece kit. And there's all these electrical parts that you can use in the
Cole, can you put together an email? We blast that out after the meeting, so that everybody has information on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can follow up on the purchase on Amazon accordingly.
And when I'll
What do you
grab
think
one of
about
these
that?
blank
Think it's a good
sign-in
idea?
sheets, and everybody that wants to sign up for it can just write their email address on there, and then we'll send out a mass email. With the information.
Okay, and anything else? Okay, we're gonna take a 5.
Before the break,
5
before
minutes.
the break, during the break, we got more tickets to sell. Did you run out of red tickets?
No, we haven't run out of red tickets yet, so more tickets to the
All
railroad.
right, so come on back and we'll take your money.
Okay, so it's about 6 minutes after 11, so at 10 after 11, we'll start again. Good? Okay. Okay, program today is the Port of Galveston, put on by David Hagar. David, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
When are you doing the raffle?
After this, after your program. We want everybody to listen to your program
Gotcha.
first.
All right, my name's David Hagar. I'm a retired engineer in the automotive sector. I put this clinic together partly because when I was new to the division, the first question I get asked a lot is, why Galveston? And I've had more than one person in this room say that question to me, and did an explanation. And I've also had people go, oh, cool, you're doing Galveston. So I've had both ends of the spectrum. Next slide, please. All right, I'm gonna cover briefly my connection to Galveston. I'm gonna do a brief discussion on the, my journey, and then we'll go into all the railroad stuff for Galveston. If you've heard of Galveston, it's probably because of the beach. I spent a lot of hours there as a kid. My grandmother, grandfather, my mother was born and raised Galveston, so I like the beach in Galveston. Or you might have heard a song or two, if not this one, from Glenn Campbell. You might have heard the next one by a band called ZZ Top. They sang about the Balinese room. How many of you have heard that song? Do you know what the Balinese room is?
That place right there.
That place right there. Most of what shaped the state of Texas was decided in the Balinese room. You've got Frank Sinatra. You've got all the rich and powerful from New York and Boston and also Texas, and they're making deals in the Balinese room at Galveston. Next one. Or since it's this crowd, you might have been there. Next one. Or you might have heard about a hurricane or two. These are the most famous ones. Most recently, Ike cost me 2 new roofs. Next one. The Weather Channel put on a program when weather changed history. And the very first one they did was about the Galveston 1900 storm. This is my mother. They came out and filmed her for 8 hours and used about 3 minutes of it.
Wow. Yeah.
It's at about the 27-minute mark on YouTube if you want to go.
We got a mop?
Actually, it's empty.
Empty.
Next slide, please. This building is the Clerk and Court Stationery. It's still there. It's now a museum for printing. My great-grandmother and her sister were working there on that day in 1900. By the time they let them go, they couldn't get home. She also had a brother that was in Austin. She had 5 other brothers and sisters, and her mother and father were at home, and all of them were killed. If she hadn't been in that building, I wouldn't be here today. So that's going in my model. Next slide. My grandfather, he was Gulf, Colorado, Santa Fe Railroad Corporation. His office was on the 5th floor. Telephone. The exchange for in Galveston for the Santa Fe building was Santa Fe 5. Is that 5, right? Yeah, Santa Fe 5. So when you called him, you wanted Santa Fe 5. Galveston had another interchange for Galveston, whatever it was. He was a doodler. He drew up Christmas cards, sent them out to his customers. He doodled Chico the Indian boy, and they decided to use it for an advertising campaign. He was in the advertising department. He retired as Express Baggage and Mail. He traveled up from Galveston through Fort Worth. So that's where we got to see him on his way to Purcell, Oklahoma, or the other way. It wasn't Amarillo at the time. They were going somewhere else. Next slide. My interest, I grew up, entertainment for me was not electronic tablets. It was when we went to Galveston, my grandmother took us down to the port. We watched boats, we watched seabirds, we watched trains. We rode the ferry, we ate seafood. Next slide. There's the train. And this is the area, this is the Mosquito Fleet, where all the shrimp boats are. And there are a lot of train tracks right through there. And that's where we watch trains. It was nonstop back in the early 70s. I also rode this one. I may have ridden that one. I don't know if it came through Galveston. I don't remember for sure. But that was a promotional Blue Goose that toured the country. It went to a lot of different places. And I don't have a list of all that. But that will probably make it into my model. Next slide, please. This is a house I inherited. My grandmother, my great-grandmother let her sister live there, and she lived in the back of the house, and the front living room, she rented out to a man who turned it into a hobby shop. He built that window, and they displayed model trains there. Next slide, please. So I did the kid thing, had a little young kid, had in-scale trains, and in 2010 is when I got the bug. So I did a whole bunch of searching around the internet, and when I found a magazine article, which I can't find today, it's not out there on the internet. It was called something like Colorado Midland, a railroad you can model. I couldn't find it, but it was an HO layout that went from Leadville through the Hagerman Pass, down to Basalt, and up through Aspen Junction. Next slide, please. I started building it. This was going to be, that big trestle was going to come out right here around that way. Actually, here's the fill right here, the mound for where the trestle was going to come. Life happens. I got that about that far and had to stop working on it for other stuff. And then after about 3 months, she said, "You ever going to do anything with that?" And still had a lot of stuff going on, so it got put away. Next slide. 2018, it returns. I'm in a different house, and this is the space, much room for that I was originally going to go with, because she wanted to be able to sit there and watch the trains. Next slide. So let's get into the meat of Galveston railroads. All railroading in Texas went to Galveston. The whole reason Burlington, Rock Island, Santa Fe, MKT, all those other railroads wanted to come to Texas was to get to the port. Yes, this is 1933, gives you an idea. Coming in from the mainland across the causeway, lots of yards. And then once you get down in here, this is where most of the meat of the activity is going to happen, with putting things on boats. Next slide. Here's the Santa Fe track chart. There are 4 yards, 4 main yards where the trains came in, and they did some shunting right in through there. In the shops. Next slide. One thing about Galveston comes in, once they built the concrete bridge, it had an inbound and an outbound lane. All of those split into 3. One was for the Santa Fe, one was for the Southern Pacific, and one was for the other, which I'll call Jay Gould stuff. Because originally Galveston, Houston, and Henderson, but eventually it was Missouri Pacific, International Great Northern. Everybody else that wasn't Santa Fe or Southern Pacific used those tracks. Next slide, please. This is a track chart before I found that I had started drawing out. To give you an idea, Burlington, Rock Island had this yard's still there. This yard's long gone, but they had 2 yards, and they used the Southern Pacific mainline tracks. Yes,
For point of reference, where is the museum, railroad museum on this chart?
right here.
Okay.
This is a Union Depot. Cotton compresses, lots and lots of them. That's only a partial. This isn't 100% complete track chart. There's more track there than what I've done. Next one. So, how did the railroads get to Galveston? When they first built the Galveston, Houston, and Henderson first built to Galveston, it stopped at the mainland. They loaded it onto a boat. They ferried it over, put it back on a train, and took it to the port. Galveston, Houston, and Henderson was the first one to build a wood trestle. Santa Fe, Southern Pacific both had trestles. 1900 storm wiped them all out. Santa Fe's was the best shape, so all of them got together and repaired it until they could build this one. It took them about 12 years to build that. Originally, it was 2 steam power tracks and the Galveston Houston electric trolley, as well as this over here is actually car, but to go across the lift bridge, you went out onto the train section and then came back over. Next slide. One of the things I wanted on my Gibbons and Druthers, I wanted to do the Bascule Bridge. The original Bascule Bridge with this gatehouse is from the mainland side. And then somewhere around 1980-ish, it got moved to the island side. This is the original house, then they moved it over there. And then recently, they decided they needed it much bigger. So they took out the Bascule bridges and put in that stand bridge. This is what it originally was when it was put in. And you can see that they took out all of this bridge to open that up wider. Next slide, please. Other rail access they did have a float bridge. There's a gulf and something, wherever that existed. There was originally a float bridge with a tugboat that pushed it across to the Baldwin Peninsula. When Santa Fe got it, they made powered ferries. And they ran that all the way up till World War II. I think a hurricane or something might have had something to do with destroyed the tracks. Something happened to the tracks over on the Bolivar side, so they discontinued it because they didn't want to rebuild it. Next slide. So things about Galveston. Largest port for cotton in the world for decades and decades and decades. It's not anymore because we don't do that much cotton. It's third largest exporter of wheat in the U.S. Sugar, you can read the rest of those. Immigration is something that a lot of people don't think about. I do because that's how I got, my mother's side of the family got here. They came in originally to Mobile, Alabama, and then moved to Galveston after Civil War. It was ahead of New Orleans, second only to New York for a lot of years. Next slide. Let's get down to the specifics here. We'll start with people. Originally there was a train station somewhere in here. No, actually it was a couple streets, it's 2 streets over from where, it's somewhere right in here. It was an old wooden station. I have a picture of it. Once that got burned down, torn down, blown down, whatever it was, all the railroads decided to build a Union Station except for Southern Pacific, who had their own. There are no pictures of that Southern Pacific Station. I'm not going to know it. Number one, my grandfather worked out of the other one, so more important than me. Next slide. Here is, otherwise known as the Railroad Museum today. This is a Behringer picture from the track side. I'm not going to really be dealing with ballast. I am going to have to figure out what I'm going to use for heat sink. Back then, these don't exist anymore, but you have your fire escape. Interestingly enough, for the center, it comes down to here to this level, and then you have to come to a different place to get down the fire escape. Next slide, please. This is my 3D model of it. Dwayne was asking. So I've drawn it up. This is ready to print. This is not the version that's ready to print. I've removed all of these detailed sconces because anybody who knows about 3D printing is if one of them messes up, I don't want to reprint the whole thing. So I'm going to print all of those separately until I get enough of the ones I like to put in onto the building. Next slide. Here's a rendering of Galveston. This is actually a visualization of my model. I'm going to have 25th Street and the Strand. This is going to be my great-grandmother's workplace, the paper. This, interestingly enough, is the Mallory lines shipping depot, a lot of shipping hub. It was originally a passenger. A lot of Irish, a lot of German, a lot of English, all came over, and a lot of them got off in Galveston. They didn't get off in New York, they got off in Galveston. What was it, 30,000 between those years? Ships went away after airplanes came along, became a cotton warehouse. And then, what, 30 years ago now, something like that, cruise ships are a big thing. So they took the original Mallory building, they left this part pretty much alone. They've redone this facade a little bit, but it looks very similar. So you basically have the old Mallory ship line. Passenger depot is now a cruise ship terminal. So you've got cruise ships going in and out of there. And so the original 1906 or whatever date that's on there is still there. This, I'm going to model this gas station. My great grandmother owned a Texaco gas station on Broadway. I don't have a picture of it, but I do have a picture of a Galveston Texaco gas station, and that's what I'm going to model up there. Next slide, please. The people, the railroads that sent passenger service to Galveston. Burlington Rock Island, which is a joint Chicago CRIP and CB&Q. They did have Texas Zephyr that went to Galveston. I got pictorial evidence of it. The Ranger and the Texas Chief for Santa Fe. International Great Northern had one they called the Southerner. Texas Pacific had a Texas Eagle that went to Galveston. Yep, I don't know. I don't have the exact years listed here. The Sunbeam, the Hustler, the Owl, and the Blue Bonnet went to Houston. But I'm not modeling buses from Houston to Galveston. And I really like those trains, so they're going to go to Galveston. This is the Sunbeam Hustler Owls, the Southern Pacific. Next slide, please. There we go. I drew up and 3D printed a Sunbeam. I took this Tato Japanese locomotive, took the shell off of it, 3D printed a shell for it. I took this Tato tender for the excursion train set and made a bandy out of it. I just got to work on my painting skills so I can paint the thing. And then there's a sample of all of my other ones. This is an Eagle. This is a Santa Fe, I believe. This is the one exception. That's my Back to the Future train. I do have a big boy, and I have the excursion set, and I'm going to run it probably just as an extra. And then Zephyr, and that's. I think this is another Southern Pacific over here. Next slide, please. Stock cotton. I've broken this out into cotton compress. Galveston is the inventor of cotton compress. They've had so much cotton going to England, they were trying to figure out a way to do it more economically. So they came up with the compress industry. So you can see all the rail tracks. They go to the compress, they compress the cotton in the bales that weighed about 120 pounds. And then they move them from the compresses to the warehouses. They did have some warehouses that were just holding and waiting for an available ship to put it on. And then, of course, blue is, those greens are to be loaded at the port. And then the blue is a mixture of various things that they would ship out of. Next slide, please. Anybody want to help me make in-scale cotton bales? I have no idea how I'm going to do it yet.
3D printer. There's a program for that.
Yeah. Next slide, please. This building as a kid fascinated me because we would be down here and I'd see the train come out of the middle of it. And I just thought that would hypnotize me as a kid. So I thought, I got to have the Crescent Cotton building in there. Turns out there's more than one building like that down in Galveston, but that's the one I remember. This is that This is at Burlington Rock Island Yard for perspective. This is Tower A, one of the first towers in Texas. And when they started giving towers numbers, they just left that one as Tower A. So it never got a number. Next slide, please. There's my rendition of it. It's not ready to 3D print yet. That's just a basic roughed out. I gotta go in and actually put the windows in. This is just photographic texture on top of it. Next slide, please. There's my Tower A. It is ready to print. That is a actual STL that can be printed. I drew that up, and I'll probably use that for my other towers because I don't want to repeat. Or each tower looks a little different. I don't know if I'm going to go with that much effort yet. Interestingly enough about this is the operator couldn't see all the trains coming and going. There's too many buildings in that. So they had this system. I thought about doing this for operations, but I think it's a lot to ask, so I'm probably not going to do it. But he would hear the blast, the shorts and the longs, and where the train was coming from and where it was going to, so he could move the levers and set the CTC. I thought that was pretty cool. Next one, please. Moving on to grain. There have been 4 grain. There have been 4 grain elevators. Actually, one of them's a flower. In Galveston. Elevator A was the original up here. It was rebuilt probably about 10 times between explosions, hurricanes, fires, and everything else. It got rebuilt multiple times. B got rebuilt a couple of times. When it was originally built, it looked like elevator A, and it looked a whole lot different than that when they tore it down. Southern Pacific docks had the Continental grain. That's the one I ended up modeling because of, by the way, this is a monster. If you never saw it, it's a huge grain elevator, and it's on now. Elevator C is not on there. That's the one that stands today. Next slide, please. Elevator A. B looked like this originally. B looked like that when I tore it down. That's Texas Star Flour Mill in the top center. That's the SP dock Continental Grain elevator. I chose this view because it showed the conveyor out to the ship pier. And then that's the current one that's down there, which is, I think, ADM. It's changed hands. He leases it from Galveston. Actually, Port of Galveston owns it. They lease it to different companies. Next slide, please. Here's a view of the Southern Pacific dock from about 1930-ish. This warehouse is there. It's not 1950. Here's the Continental Grain. You can kind of see that conveyor, but it's not real clear. This is a Southern Pacific warehouse at the end that was leased by Imperial Sugar. So at the time of this, Imperial Sugar's there. They will later, when Texas Gulf Sulfur moves out, they will lease the pier where Texas Gulf Sulfur is and build their own buildings. They're really sharp pointed pyramid buildings. And if you're familiar with Galveston, that's what most people remember about Imperial Sugar and Galveston. I think the curves is kind of neat. I want to try to capture that feel for my railroad. Next slide, please. So that's what I'm going to model. These will be 3D printed, as will the grain elevator probably. I don't know how much styrene scratch building I'm going to do. I'm going to try my hand at it somewhere, but I haven't figured that out yet. This is the Southern Pacific office right here. Next slide, please. Kind of a sketchy view. Here's that overhead conveyor to go out to the ships and the dump house for the grain. Southern Pacific Roundhouse. Interesting note right here. Here's the roundhouse and here's the water tower. I'm going to show you a picture that's not, in fact, it's labeled incorrectly as a Colorado, as a Santa Fe turntable and roundhouse. But that's the only place where the water towers are behind it. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead. Next one. Another view of this. This is the original Galveston Wharf's fleet of trains. Shortly after the elevator reopened. Next one, please. I threw this one in here because it's a pretty good idea of what my track's going to look like compared to most of the scenic track. I'm going to be pretty close to ground level. You're not going to see any ballast. In some places, you're not going to see railroad ties. It's going to be covered over by sand. Next one, please. Next big industry in Galveston was sulfur. This is Texas Gulf sulfur. As I said, eventually they leave, and right here becomes Duval sulfur. But that's after my time. I'm modeling 1950, by the way. Duval doesn't come in there until the late 60s, I don't think. Next slide, please. Sulfur. You have a conveyor. It's a rubber. I think it's a rubber conveyor that they load the sulfur in. That comes up to the dump house that loads it onto the ship. The trains park, and you have a bin here and a bin here, and you have these cranes that take it out of the bins and dump it on the conveyor. But you have room for all kinds of railroad cars. This is actually a cotton warehouse at the time, I think. I'm not sure what they were using that warehouse for. The reason all these letters are here, this is creosote. Interestingly enough, I don't think they're manufacturing it. I know the Santa Fe did all of their creosoting up in Somerville. But they all had, I don't know if it's because of the salt water or what, but every railroad had each one of these is a different railroad. And they had to have creosote in Galveston. And it might just be because of salt content in the air that they had to re-creosote ties and things to keep them from rotting. I don't know. But I haven't been able to find why it was there, but it was there. Santa Fe Roundhouse, which is the one I'm ultimately going to model. There's that Fresca cotton gun. This is a freight house. And we'll get to that later. Next one. There's your dump house. I'm going to model that. I don't know how I'm going to do those yet. I'm probably going to call Dwayne and say, how do I do this?
Talk to Russell.
What's that? Yeah, he's, and, but yeah, that's a roughed out. I haven't done any detail on that yet. Next one, oh, wait a minute. 1954, $75 million, which is in today's market, $832 million a year. In sulfur. Next slide. That's why. All of those salt domes, that's where most of the sulfur in the United States came from. There was all these salt domes because at the top of the salt dome is a bunch of sulfur. And each one of these, most of these had their own railroad to it. Either MKT or even Frisco, who didn't technically go to Galveston because they had an agreement with the Katy that Frisco came into Dallas-Fort Worth, and almost everything south of there, all the Frisco cars got moved to a Katy train and went on down to Galveston through Katy. But I think Frisco even had a sulfur operation off a salt dome somewhere. Next slide, please. More salt. There's that conveyor. That one's going to be fun to try to model too. Not sure how I'm going to do that yet. And then you can see, here's the big bins. And you have stuff going on and off barges, everything else under the sun. Next slide, please. Next industry is sugar. As I said, it's originally here. It moves to the sulfur location later on. Next slide. Reiterated that. These are the iconic Imperial Sugar buildings that most people who know Galveston remember. That's after it moved. Here's that sugar warehouse right here and another view. After World War II, destroyer sitting there, no warehouse. It's gone. I'm not sure why. But that is the Southern Pacific offices for their area out there. Next one, please. Freight depots. Everybody had their own freight depots, and of course, everybody knows that's a team track. So you can send pretty much anything to a freight depot except really a tanker in Galveston. I don't think anybody put tankers to a freight depot. The green one on the far end up there, Burlington, Rock Island, shared one. The next one next to it is the Santa Fe. The orange one is the Southern Pacific. Interestingly enough, the fire insurance maps. This one right here, the sole contents is labeled beer. And then there's the J. Gould. Everything under everybody else that's not one of those is in there. I really was hoping to model the INGN, but by the time of 1950, everything that International Great Northern is buying is being painted in Missouri Pacific colors, the Missouri Pacific. They're not even putting the logo on anything anymore. Next slide, please. There's that freight depot. It still stands today, though it doesn't look like that. I think I got it in the next slide. You can see Galveston, Houston, Henderson, International Great Northern, NKT. The Galveston Historical Foundation has bought this. This back warehouse is going to be the 1900 Storm Museum. The front building is going to be general purpose. If you want to make it apartments, if you want to lease it and make it apartments, they will help you do that. If you want to run a business out of there, they'll set it up as a business, whatever you want to do. You can have a freight depot for your business. That one is pretty much ready to 3D print. Here's the front of it printed on my 3D printer. Next slide, please. There it is today. Although, yeah, I don't know if they've started working on it yet. That was actually about 5 years ago. Next slide. There's the Santa Fe one. It was wood. It's no longer there. I'm glad I got that picture. I don't have a picture of the Southern Pacific, and I don't have a picture of Burlington, Rock Island. So I'm doing the Santa Fe and the NKT. Next one. Bananas. I love the banana pit. As I told you, I spent a lot of time here with the mosquito fleet. So I was down there by the banana pier. And then I was, I don't know, maybe this big when Chiquito got slapped because they were stealing bananas off of Caribbean islands, and so they got slapped down, and so they shut down, and then Del Monte moved in next door. So now the bananas in Galveston are through Del Monte. Excellent opportunity for lots of reefer action because they were shipped all the way to Colorado and Midwest. Bananas went everywhere from Galveston. They did a lot of banana traffic. Next one. There's that building. I love the little cranes. This is open air. The fishing boats we drove, we always fished. The Galveston party boats is right here. We always drove right by that, and so I have fond memories. Next slide, please. There's a previous version of it that got beat up by a hurricane. A little different thing, but you can see the banana corp. All reefers. Did models for power line and stuff too. Next slide, please. I gotta have beer on my turn. Pabst shut down at Prohibition and never came back. This was originally the Galveston Houston Brewery. They made Southern Select, Magnolia. They did not make Falstaff. They became a soft drink bottling operation during Prohibition, reopened for a brief period after Prohibition, and then Falstaff bought them out. So I'm modeling Falstaff. Falstaff fans? Yeah. Next one, please. There's the building. Artist rendition, but I kind of like having the little yard there with the palm trees and stuff. I'm not trying to do that. That's an actual photo of it before my era. It's grown a little bit bigger than that by my era. Can't really see it on here, but you got all different railroads. Everybody's lining up to get through. Next slide, please. There's my rendition of it. As you can see, it's grown a little bit this way. I'm not done with that. I've just started on all of the details. Just barely started on it. There's a whole lot. Can you go back one? There's a whole lot of detail. Next slide. We got a lot of work to do on that. Okay. I got 3 excuses to have tankers. We got natural gas, we got petroleum products, and we got creosote. Creosote, lots of petroleum, and then natural gas. Next slide, please. There's that creosote blown up, so you can see a little bit better. Next slide. Seafood. I don't know anything about the Liberty oyster up here. I don't know what they did. I know it from the insurance, Sanborn insurance maps, it was there, but what specifically it did, I don't really know. Hills and Sampson's, we bought tons of seafood from. It's a walk up, you can go buy fresh seafood right out of the Gulf from there. I'll come back there.
Which,
And Texas Gulf Fisheries, I think, was mostly railroad and shipped. I don't know that anybody bought on Galveston Island bought seafood from Texas Gulf Fisheries. I think it all went to Houston and Dallas and wherever. Next slide. Way back here, Gulf Fisheries. Lots of boats. I put this in here. My great-great-grandfather, I have about 4 generations of Bensons that were stevedores. Most of them weren't the physical labor stevedores. They were the ones guiding the crews, telling them how to load the ship so that it didn't fall over and so that loads don't shift and make the boat sink and all of that kind of stuff. And my great-great-grandfather liked to fish off of Boone's Wharf. So one of the few prototype exceptions I might make is I might not call that Gulf Fisheries, I might call it Boone's Wharf Fisheries, because it's in the same location. Next slide, please. There's Sampson's. Sampson's is this closest one. The one next to it is Hills. Shrimp boats come up to the back of it, unload, off you go. Later on, we figured out you can walk out here and buy them straight off the shrimp boats when they come in. If you see one come in, you just walk out there and buy it right off the shrimp boat. Next slide, please. One thing I forgot to mention, in 1970, you could walk anywhere in here. It's all gated off now. You can't do that. But one of the things I remember was walking up to the sulfur and picking up what I remember as being about a softball size chunk of sulfur. Remember stuff when it probably was about that big. And I carried it around all over the place, and we were ready to go, and we walked by the sulfur place, and I was tired of carrying it, so I just stood by myself. This is one example, black hardware. There was a lot of metal going in and out of Galveston. There's one building that just builds boilers for steamships. There's all kinds of hardware, lumber stuff all in through the Strand. It was building materials, anything and everything you can think of, or steel or wood is going in and out of there, nuts and bolts and screws and just if you find the 1949 Sanborn maps is on the University of Texas.edu website. You'll find the Galveston Sanborn Arts. You start going up and down the Strand, ice houses, hardware, foodstuffs, various grocery, all that kind of stuff, and lumber. And actually, the lumber, my great uncle worked in a lumber mill out here somewhere. There was a lot of different lumber mills, different functions. The one he worked at made furniture and boats. Next slide, please. Here's black hardware. Nice little modeling. There's the place that just makes boilers. Lots of different opportunities. Here's that Mallory lens. I had to have that in there. I wanted it as, I mean, Spraydo's gonna have to paint it in. I'm gonna make it flat. Probably at the time of that, they're probably mostly cotton warehouses. They've stopped doing passengers at the time of that picture. I think that's Behringer also. Next one. The Strand. They really did call it the Wall Street of the South. If you'll see, over half of these buildings, there was a New York architect that was having trouble, was frustrated at how slow his opportunities were coming in New York, because there's architects everywhere in New York. He moved to Galveston, he designed most of his buildings. It's called the Historic Strand. If you've never been on it, I encourage you to go take a walk up and down the Strand. It's some really interesting architecture there. This is prior to 1923. This is the original Union Depot. It was a red brick building. They added on this one, which is pretty much what it is today. They tore, this is after the 1915 hurricane. There used to be a bell tower right here. It's gone. And the 1915 hurricane knocked it off. They didn't rebuild it. They ended up knocking it down, I think, and building the white building. I'm not sure how they did it. If they tore it down or if they could just add on 8 stories from a 4-story. I'm guessing they probably have to tear it down and rebuild it. Also, I'm modeling this. Here's where that gas station is. This building right here behind, just barely behind here, is the Panama Hotel. I'm modeling that. The building that's right here isn't original anymore, and I don't know what it is. But this building right here is my grandmother's building that she survived the hurricane in, and I'm moving it up this way, so it'll be next to the Panama Hotel. And then this is the Commerce building. The second floor is where all the Stevedore company was that about 3 generations of my ancestors worked at. So since this building isn't original anymore, and I don't know what it was, except for what it says on Sanborn, I'm moving the Commerce building here. But that's the only thing I'm doing to the prototype. I'll have to check it and see if I can get the, what's the prototype?
Basically recreating a picture.
Yeah. So next slide, please. Wood products, lumber yards, a couple examples I pulled out of Sanborn. Next slide, please. Grocers. You'll still see these kinds of things in Galveston today, although they're highly faded. I think this one's still there. If I remember right. Next one, please. Clothing. Back in the day, sailing ships, you had all kinds of hemp products, yeah, also. Rope, sailcloth was all made out of hemp back then. Next, Galveston had 3 roundhouses. Not a lot of people knew that. Missouri Pacific eventually used, I just found out, researching this over and over and over again, I thought by the time of my era, GH&H was long gone. It wasn't. They were still GH&H trains in 1950 from Galveston to Houston. Not very many, but there were. Actually, they mostly served as a switcher function for all of the JetBlue stuff, Missouri Pacific, Texas Pacific, NKT, all of those people. The position of that one, I'm going to come back to this pictures in that next one. Here, this photograph was in the Railroad Museum basement when I kept. I'm glad it was preserved electronically because the photograph is gone. A lot of photographs died because they were in the basement of the Railroad Museum. Southern Pacific, uniquely Southern Pacific. Santa Fe, uniquely Santa Fe. GH&H, which Missouri Pacific and all everybody else used. Burlington Rock Island, I don't know how they serviced their stuff in Galveston. Can't find anything on it. They must have paid somebody to use their facilities because they don't exist on the island. As you can see, Chicago, Burlington, Quincy, Crip, Santa Fe, Texas and Pacific. All of these railroads, including the Frisco, went to Galveston. I don't know how many Frisco locomotives. I don't remember seeing any Frisco locomotives, but my memory's not that good. Next one. Santa Fe warehouse, when it's down to 6 stalls. You saw how many was originally in, I think it was something like 15 stalls. GH&H in the bottom. And the website I got this off of called that the Santa Fe. First thing, it's not wood. Pretty obvious clue. If that gives it away. There's, at no time was there a water tower off the GH&H. All the stuff lines up to be the T&O. Next one, please. I've had those decals printed up. I'm going to have me a number 20 and a number 21 GH&H switchers on the island. Up top is the Galveston Wharfs. Those are SW1s. These are S2s. Next one, please. Some more stuff. I've got about 6 of these in N-scale. I told you I had photographic evidence. The Zephyr, that actually happens to be a Rock Island rocket train instead of a Burlington. Next slide, please. This is something I wanted to try to get in there. This is a pretty famous track in Galveston. It's called the Z track. You like diamonds? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on one track. The more I got into this, I thought, this might make it very interesting and operating to have all kinds of trains when you go across the same diamonds all the time. And people actually having to get permission instead of, I've been on layouts that have a diamond. There's never anybody I had to wait on when I've operated. I just was able to go straight through. I'm hoping I can stop and wait. Next slide, please. John's Oyster Resort was the seafood restaurant way back when. As you come off the causeway, 45, Broad Street, bends left, and right after that bend was John's Oyster Resort. It was the first stop on the Galveston-Houston electric train. That was their first stop. It was John's Oyster Resort. It wasn't an air-conditioned building. It was ceiling fans. But the most memorable thing as a kid to me was out back. You could walk out back, walk down to behind that back here that you can't really see is Offit's Bayou. And John's sold so many oysters that they had a pier of oysters from here to the layout back there of oyster shells. You can walk out, we'd go out there on the oyster shell pier and skip oyster shells across the water. I looked through a bunch of the 8mm films that my dad had. I was sure he probably filmed that at one point in time, but I never found one. And some of the 8mm film wasn't in good shape, so I didn't go through. Kept sticking when I tried to go through it. And I didn't go through all of them, but I gave up. But there's my model. Once again, 3D printed. I used a rattle can. I got too close. I don't know if you can see all the graining, but the graining is a little bit bigger than I want for concrete anyway. So I'll probably do that another one. I've since learned that you buy the cheap stuff, and as long as you stay far enough away, it'll give you a nice finish if you want to do a rattle can. Next one, please. This is the Galveston warp. Basically, you're at elevator B. You're on top of elevator B looking down at the Galveston Wharf's engine facility. I hadn't given any thought to putting it in there. But then somebody said, are you going to do that engine facility? So I started thinking about it. Next slide, please. Oh, no, didn't have it. It'll be on another slide. This is my grandmother's Texaco station. We own this nightclub, or she owned that nightclub. My parents bought 100 acres outside Hillsboro, and it had a wood house with wood floors, farmhouse. She decided to, McDonald's came and said, can we buy your stuff, buy your land? And she sold it to McDonald's. Well, they didn't want any of that stuff, so we went in and raided all the carpet out of that nightclub and put it in a farmhouse in Hillsboro. It's still a McDonald's today. If you go down Broad Street, on the right-hand side about, is it 53rd? Yeah, between 52nd and 53rd Street, where that McDonald's is, that's, I think it's been that great. My mom worked her way through high school filling cars. It was full service back then. Next slide. Here's my Gibbons. Some of them, at least when I started out, that was my Gibbons. All the places I wanted to do. I did want realistic prototype modeling and operations. So I wasn't going to kit bash. I made up my mind pretty soon. I was going to try to 3D model pretty close, as close as I could to the real buildings. My access to information back to Galveston, I probably got about 30 books at home on Galveston. I've got, my mother has traveled to follow the guy that came over from Ireland. He was 14 years old. He hired on a ship, got to America, got off the boat in Mobile, lived there for a while, joined the Civil War force, the South forces, got captured, imprisoned in Cincinnati. I got a letter that he wrote to his commanding officers, a photocopy of the letter that he wrote to his commanding officers that my mother found in some Civil War battleground place about how he was being treated well and all that kind of stuff. And once he got freed by the Union, he didn't go back to Mobile. He went to Galveston. And that's where my Galveston ancestry starts, is that number. She went to Ireland, could not find anything on him or his family or anything. We're guessing he was a sole potato famine 14-year-old that managed to hire on a boat and get out of there. Next one. This is my plan right now as it stands. Remember that slide I said in my original space?
Foreclosures, though.
Corey actually gave me this idea. The yard is, Galveston, you saw the yards and yards and yards. Well, I don't have space. So you come in and it's one yard ladder from this side, but coming on this side, you're going to have Southern Pacific, middle set is Santa Fe, and this set will be the Missouri Pacific stuff, Jay Gould stuff. Now, I have 3 main lines. If you'll notice, they all have different destinations. So some industries, however, by here, they've all merged back together. So they can all get to the Union Depot, they can all get to the beer. And I'm gonna have Santa Fe, Burlington, Rock Island go to this freight house. And this is gonna be Southern Pacific and all of the executives. Next slide. Another same view of my 3D image. We're talking about Union Depot. I think I'm gonna manage to get a flat. It's not going to be part of my operating sessions. It's just going to be a scene breakup and something there. Somebody said, "Are you gonna put the other engine house on, engine facilities on in there?" Well, that's where they really are from the grain elevator, and it goes through the backside of the grain elevator and joins up with the track. So I might be able to. I was thinking about actually putting a small yard in here and letting the Galveston Wharves park everything in the yard and let the Galveston Wharves take it out here to the SP docks, and I'll blew that off. Next one, please. How much time am I? Where am I on time? Another view, quick one. Santa Fe Freight House. Told you I was gonna have that in there. Next one. This is non-wharfs activities. Brewery, another freight house and roundhouse. Next one. That's the Southern Pacific docks. Had to have my bananas in there. Next one. Used to come on Galveston Island and went over the vascular bridge. Of course, now they have the interstate version. I do want to try to make that a working. They don't have that kitten in scale anymore. I think they had it at one time, but I'm gonna build my own. And then that's John's. Next one. Cotton compresses, interesting for how to do my track. Next one. Oh, and that, if you saw it, power. A lot of interesting little details in there that I saw that I liked. Next one. This is Fort Worth. When Denver decided to do a promotional photograph, sulfur. Next one. During World War II, not everything was by train. They started using tractors to bring cotton in the compresses, compress it, and then tractors to take it out to the docks. Next one. I have this bag at my house. Harvey. I thought I was going to bring it up here and I forgot. Next one. This is not the Jean Lafitte home you're looking for. When he left Galveston, he burned his fort house down to the ground. This is the second rendition. Somebody bought the land, built a house. It later burned down. Next slide. That's it today. It's still the original bottom floor the white foundation and all the other pictures. It's still there. It's got a historical marker. You know, it's in Galveston. You can go visit it. It's John Lafitte's. Next one. Textile flour mills. Next slide. General, what it looks like today, but that's in there for Tower 98, 97, 96. But of course, by 1950, 96 and 98 are shut down. Everything's being run out of the middle. And then, yeah. Next slide, please. That's 96. That's what it's going to look like in my model if I put it in there, because they're not using it anymore. It's beat up and run down. Next one. 3 generations of my family lived in that house. It's still there. They let my mom and dad in there about 2 decades ago. And they took pictures, and I took this picture out of here. I didn't mean to, but I did. The wedding announcement for my great aunt Maud is that scene exactly. She's standing in her bridal deal with a bouquet of flowers, and you can see the stairs and there's newspaper clipping. Next slide, please. Other interesting buildings. This is the Bishop's Palace. That's the Moody House. Same guy that Moody, Texas is named after. Next slide. Does everybody know the significance of this building? This is Ashton Depot. And there's a holiday now because General Magruder stood on the second floor balcony and told the slaves they were free on June 19th, 9 months after the Civil War was over. So that's why Juneteenth is such a big deal. Is Texas slaves were free such a later time that they made us have a holiday. Next one. Any questions?
One comment, one question. The comment is, on that large, freight dock where there's now a cruise terminal, when you're coming off of a cruise ship, you can't see it unless you're coming off a cruise ship. The baggage claim room is the north 2/3 of the building. And a lot of it is still the original. You look around, all large columns, 3 or 4 stories high.
I haven't been in there, so I don't
And
know.
so it's a lot, it looks very original. Not, they literally haven't done much.
I think they try to
with it.
preserve as much as they could of the building.
And then my question is, what about the trolley line?
The Galveston Houston Electric was a financial disaster. They didn't build it correctly. The grade was built about 8 or 10 feet tall, but they just did it with sand. So every time there was a big storm, even if it wasn't a hurricane, they had parts of it wash out. They were constantly trying to repair that thing and keep trains running. And it just, I think it shut down by 1915. It opened in 1880 or whatever, and it shut down.
There's still tracks in the streets. There's still a
Yeah.
farm.
Oh, they've relayed stuff.
On your layout.
Galveston has just bought 3 new trolleys that were custom ordered by Galveston that are replicas of trolleys from the 1920s that actually ran in Galveston. So they're, one of them's soon to be available to ride it around the island. They've got trolley tracks back in the streets. They put them back down, you know, for a while they were gone, but they're back now, and they have real trolleys that run around Galveston now.
My question's on your layout.
Yeah.
How is that going to be incorporated?
I don't quite cross that bridge. You did see some track. Okay, I had to cut across the corners of some streets. I'm not doing the actual electric trolleys. So I'm probably gonna have the underground. You've seen the, how they do car motion. It's a magnet that moves around and the car follows it. That's what I'm thinking I'm gonna try to do for that miniature Blue Goose. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Former father, we were just down in Galveston, I learned more about where we, we talk about all the detail that's there. I had no idea how it was. You see a lot of the old stuff there, a lot of the buildings, before. We don't get this kind of information.
About half of that Falstaff, 10 years ago, that Falstaff brewery was all there. It was gang had, there were burnt cars inside of it, graffiti everywhere. It still was the Falstaff brewery. And then a guy bought it about 10 years ago, tore down a big chunk of it, and now he's repurposed some of it.
I appreciate your presentation. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
Along with the history of it, I had no idea of it. I was born for a day.
Mom went to Ball High School, class of 47. That was the only high school, I think, in 47.
My family came to Galveston here around there. Morning was college. So part of the coffee industry, any Texas, going through Galveston and all the way up to the part of the country.
Eventually, the compresses moved inland. And a lot of those compressed, a lot of that cotton industry is now cruise ship parking too. They just took the buildings and turned them into covered parking for cruise ships.
Three quick questions. Okay. What modeling software do you use?
That is SketchUp. There's good stuff about SketchUp. There's bad stuff about SketchUp. I don't do enough CAD, and I don't want to sit and do enough CAD to stay current on it. I've been a CAD person at times in my career for years, not decades, but 3 years here, 4 years there, different versions of CAD. I get away from it 3 years and I go back to start trying to use it, and it's like starting over. With SketchUp, when I went back to it, yeah, it was kind of like starting over, but within a couple of days, I was like back full.
Okay. The second one would be, what kind of printer do you have?
My original printer was a Anycubic Photon.
So you do resin print?
I do resin print. So the original resin printers were large camera size. My next printer was an Anycubic Mono XL, which is a small tablet size. The first one, there's a dark surface on top of the lens. That's a polarizer. They don't work without that polarizer. I used that one for years and never had a problem. I bought the
David, we're gonna have to kind of speed things up.
XL and it scraped off right away.
Okay. Eric, you had one last question,
Yeah,
real quick?
ABS, print everything in ABS?
No, I use different plastics, but mostly I use the Seriatech Pro.
David, thank you very much. It's very interesting presentation.
Right now, I'm trying to calibrate my new printer for the resins I use. As soon as that, I'll be back. I'm ready to start printing the Santa Fe building back here.
Okay, let's move on to, thank you again, David. Let's wrap up, and we're gonna have the raffle. So Betty, you wanna come up here and pick a ticket? Okay, the winning ticket is 166. Who's got that ticket? 166. There we go. We got a winner. Wow. Congratulations.
All right.
Here are the tickets. 9166, that's it. Okay, there are your tickets. Promotional tickets or promotional information. Congratulations. Here, take this stuff. Oh, okay. There you go.
Go buy a lottery ticket now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you all very much. That's the end of the meeting. We'll see you next month. Appreciate the participation and the involvement.
We're stacking them on the front end of the